Princess Liara stood at the edge of Valoria's grand observation deck, her eyes tracing the floating cities that shimmered under the light of 3 suns. The air around her was warm but crisp, carrying the faint hum of the energy fields that held the massive cities aloft. She had grown up surrounded by elegance and power, yet today, she felt a strange unrest that even the calmest meditations could not chase away. Her advisors had tried to reassure her. "Princess, all is well. Our borders are secure, and the council remains loyal," said Elder Vayon, his long robes whispering as he approached. His silver hair glinted in the sunlight, and his eyes, though old, still carried sharp intelligence. "Your concern is natural, but perhaps overthought." Liara shook her head. "It is more than concern. Something is coming, Vayon. I feel it, deep inside, though I cannot name it." She turned her gaze back to the horizon, where the outer planets glowed faintly in the distance. The Valorian people had always been aware of threats, pirates, rogue factions, and the occasional aggressor from beyond the stars, but this feeling was different. It was quiet, insistent, and growing stronger with each passing day. At that moment, the palace gates opened to reveal an unusual sight. A human in full battle armor, stepping onto Valorian soil for the first time. Commander Kael Arden had come on behalf of the United Systems Council, a human alliance that often acted as mediators between worlds. He walked with purpose, his posture straight, yet his eyes scanned everything carefully. To the Valorians, humans were rare visitors, known mostly through legend and reports of their strange resilience. Kael looked entirely ordinary to them, yet something about his presence immediately drew attention. Liara's hand instinctively went to the amulet around her neck, a small crystal shaped like a crescent moon. She had inherited it from her mother, and though it had no known magical properties, it often pulsed faintly when she sensed danger or significant events. Today, it thrummed with a barely perceptible vibration when Kael entered her line of sight. The human's arrival was formally announced in the Grand Hall, a space of towering columns and glowing panels that displayed messages and star charts. Kael bowed politely, unfamiliar with Valorian customs but keenly aware of the importance of first impressions. He had trained for situations like this for years, yet standing before a princess in a hall filled with nobility and armed guards made his instincts sharpen. Liara observed him from the dais, noting the subtle way he carried himself. He was not Valorian, yet there was an energy about him, a readiness and determination that seemed to radiate. Even more unsettling was the feeling that he should not just be here but that he was meant to be here. She dismissed the thought immediately. A princess should not indulge in flights of fancy, she reminded herself. Days passed, and Kael adapted quickly to Valorian life. He trained with their warriors, learning their combat styles and demonstrating techniques that even the elite found impressive. Yet what truly fascinated Liara was his calmness in moments of crisis. During a simulated attack in the palace courtyard, Kael's movements were fluid, his intuition sharp. He seemed to anticipate not just the actions of the attackers, but the flow of the battlefield itself. It was during one such training session that the first signs of the strange connection appeared. Liara had been observing from a balcony above, assessing the soldiers' tactics when she saw Kael stumble slightly, as if caught by an invisible force. She felt a sudden jolt in her chest, a sharp awareness that mirrored his hesitation. Her eyes widened, but Kael straightened immediately and continued without hesitation. No one else had noticed, yet Liara could not shake the sensation. That evening, she confided in Elder Vayon. "I do not know what this is, Vayon, but whenever he is near, it feels as if I recognize him. Not as a warrior, but as someone I have known." Vayon's expression grew serious. "Princess, there are legends, old and almost forgotten, stories of bonded mates, 2 souls connected across species, meant to unite worlds or alter destinies. It has been centuries since such a bond appeared, if it ever truly did." Liara's brow furrowed. "Bonded mates? That is myth. I am the princess of Valoria. I deal in reality, not stories for children." "Yet sometimes," Vayon said quietly, Myths have a way of becoming real. When the universe decides it is time, Liara tried to dismiss it, but the feeling would not fade. The next morning, news arrived that a rogue faction within the city had attempted to infiltrate the palace. Liara had been scheduled to inspect the archives, but Kael, assigned to her security detail, had sensed the danger before the alarms sounded. The attack was swift and brutal. Shadows moved through the corridors, weapons humming with energy. Kael intercepted them, his human instincts and Valorian training combining in a seamless dance of defense and counterattack. Liara followed as best she could, her own limited combat training insufficient for the speed of the assailants. Yet every time Kael glanced back at her, she felt a strange surge of confidence, as if they were in perfect synchronization. When the last intruder fell, the palace was silent, except for the labored breathing of the survivors. Liara's heart still raced, but she felt an undeniable truth settle within her. Kael had saved her life, not just as a bodyguard or warrior, but in a way that seemed personal, almost intimate, beyond explanation. Later that night, in the quiet of the royal chambers, Liara approached the artifact that had long been kept in the palace vault, a crystalline structure etched with ancient Valorian symbols. It had always been inert, a relic of the past, but when Kael stepped into the room, the crystal glowed faintly, resonating in a way that startled them both. Liara reached out, and Kael's hand hovered over hers, their fingers nearly touching. The light intensified, and for a moment, it was as if the room itself held its breath. Liara realized then that this was no ordinary human. Something ancient and extraordinary had stirred at his presence. We need to understand what this means," Liara said softly, her voice trembling. "I do not know what is happening, but I feel connected to you." "An Afor." Kael looked at her, confusion and wonder in his eyes. "I feel it too. I've never understood it before. But now, I cannot deny it. There is something between us. Something that goes beyond explanation." They spent the rest of the night in careful examination, tracing the symbols on the crystal, consulting hidden texts, and sharing their sensations. Each discovery brought more questions, but also a sense of inevitability. It was as if the universe itself had orchestrated their meeting, placing them together for a purpose neither fully understood. By dawn, Liara knew one thing for certain. Kael Arden was not just a human warrior. He was someone destined to be a part of her life in a way that would change Valoria forever. And though she did not yet understand the full nature of their bond, she realized that her instincts had been right all along. Something extraordinary was unfolding, and they were at the center of it. As the first light of the twin moons reflected off the floating city spires, Liara felt a quiet determination settle over her. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but perhaps, together with Kael, they could face whatever lay ahead. And though the legends of bonded mates seemed like stories from the distant past, she could no longer dismiss the possibility that she had found hers. Outside the palace walls, the wind carried whispers of change. The stars seemed brighter, more watchful, and somewhere deep in the cosmos, the universe had begun to take notice of the human and the princess who had crossed its path. The morning sun of Valoria cast long, golden rays across the palace. As Liara stood in the inner courtyard, her thoughts still tangled with the revelations from the previous night. The bond she felt with Kael was undeniable, yet she did not fully understand it. The human warrior had become more than a protector. He was a presence that stirred her instincts and senses in ways she could not explain. Kael approached her quietly, his footsteps soft on the polished stone. "Princess," he said, his voice low. "I could not sleep either. What we felt last night, it was not a dream. I feel it too." Liara nodded, still hesitant. "I do not know what this means, Kael, but I cannot deny it. Something ancient, something beyond us, is at work." Kael studied her for a moment, his expression a mixture of awe and determination. "Then we must understand it. Whatever this is, we cannot ignore it. If the bond is real, it may be the key to protecting Valoria, and perhaps much more." Their first step was to consult Elder Vayon. The old man had spent decades studying Valoria's history and the legends that surrounded the ancient artifacts. When Liara and Kale entered his study, the room smelled faintly of herbs and aged parchment, and the walls were lined with shelves of scrolls and crystals that pulsed softly. "The bond has awakened," Vayon said immediately upon seeing them, his voice grave. "It is rare, almost unheard of between humans and Valorians. The legends speak of shared strength, heightened awareness, and the ability to sense danger together. But with such power comes great risk. There are those who would exploit it if they knew." Liara frowned. "Exploit it? Who would dare?" "The factions within the palace," Vayon said, his gaze darkening. "There are ambitious nobles who see the legend as a means to control not just Valoria, but the surrounding systems. They may attempt to manipulate you, princess, or even sever the bond before its power fully awakens." Kale clenched his fists. "Then we must act quickly. We cannot let anyone harm you, or use this against your people." Vayon nodded solemnly. "You will need to understand each other completely, your thoughts and actions synchronized. The bond will grow stronger with trust, focus, and shared experiences. Only then can you face the dangers that are approaching." Liara and Kale began training together in earnest. Beyond physical combat, they explored exercises that tested their coordination, intuition, and ability to sense each other's intentions. At first, the sessions were awkward. Liara was hesitant, careful not to reveal too much, and Kale struggled to adjust to Valorian ways of movement and energy manipulation. But slowly, they began to notice subtle changes. When one moved, the other seemed to anticipate the motion instinctively. When danger approached, even something as simple as a rolling log during training, they reacted as one. Their bond was no longer just a feeling. It was becoming tangible. Outside the palace, the rogue faction was already plotting. The nobles who resented Liara's growing power and feared the bond's potential had allied with mercenaries from distant star systems. They studied Kale carefully, attempting to understand his origins and weaknesses. Their spies reported that the bond was awakening, though none could comprehend its full extent. One evening, during a quiet walk through the bioluminescent forest that surrounded the palace, Liara and Kale discussed the visions and sensations that had been troubling them. The forest glowed softly, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow on their path. "I saw a vision last night," Kale admitted, his voice hesitant. "I was on this planet, but it was not me. Or at least, it felt like a past version of me. I could see you, and the crystal, and something calling to us." Liara's heart skipped a beat. "I felt the same. It was like the universe itself was speaking to us, guiding us towards something important." She hesitated, then added, "Do you think the bond chose us? Or did we choose each other?" Kale shook his head. "I do not know. But I feel as though fate is involved. And whatever it is, we cannot ignore it." Their quiet moment was interrupted by a sudden tremor in the ground. Alarm lights flashed across the forest as Kale instinctively drew his weapon, his human reflexes responding faster than any Valorian could. Liara followed suit, though her movements were more hesitant. From the shadows emerged a small group of intruders, mercenaries equipped with advanced energy weapons. They had breached the palace defenses, striking swiftly to kidnap Liara. Kale reacted immediately, moving to shield her as energy blasts cracked against the forest's crystalline trees. Liara's instincts sharpened in response to Kale's presence. The bond surged between them, guiding her movements. She dodged and countered attacks with a precision she did not know she possessed. Together, they moved as a single unit, anticipating each other's actions perfectly. The mercenaries were skilled, but they had not encountered anything like this. Their attacks were met with synchronized defenses, precise counters, and coordinated maneuvers that left them confused and vulnerable. Kale and Liara fought with growing confidence, their bond now fully awakened in the heat of battle. When the last mercenary fell, the forest was silent again, except for the heavy breathing of the two warriors. Liara's hand brushed Kale's, a reflexive gesture that caused the bond to pulse with energy. The sensation was overwhelming, almost tangible, like a thread connecting their minds and hearts. "We cannot stay here," Kale said, his voice steady but urgent. "They will regroup, and they will come again. We need to understand the full extent of this bond, and how to use it before they strike again." Liara nodded. "You are right. But I cannot stop thinking. What if the bond is more than just strength? What if it is destiny?" Kale looked at her, his expression firm. "Then we will face it together. Whatever destiny the universe has chosen, we will meet it side by side." The following days were spent in preparation. Liara and Kale delved deeper into Valorian texts, uncovering ancient stories of bonded mates who had influenced wars, alliances, and even the rise and fall of civilizations. They learned about mental synchronization, emotional resonance, and the ways the bond could amplify their abilities, not just physically, but strategically. During one training session, Kale noticed something extraordinary. As they moved in tandem, their awareness of each other's thoughts and intentions grew stronger. A glance, a subtle gesture, even a shift in breathing communicated volumes. Liara could feel his thoughts as clearly as her own, and he could sense her intentions before she acted. The bond was no longer just a legend. It was a living reality, growing with each shared experience. Yet, their growing connection did not go unnoticed. Spies reported their activities to the rogue faction, whose leaders grew increasingly desperate. They devised a plan to capture the crystal artifact and separate the bonded pair, believing that doing so would weaken Valoria's defenses and allow them to seize power. One night, as Liara and Kale rested in the palace gardens, an alert sounded. A small strike team had infiltrated the palace vault. Without hesitation, they moved together, the bond guiding their every step. The team was formidable, equipped with alien technology designed to bypass Valorian defenses, but Liara and Kale's coordination was flawless. Kale disarmed 2 attackers while Liara disabled the energy locks on the vault doors. When they reached the crystal, it pulsed with bright light, responding to their presence in a way that stunned even them. Liara reached out, and Kale's hand covered hers. The energy surged, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. The attackers froze, disoriented by the power radiating from the bond. In that instant, Liara understood. The bond was not just about strength or combat. It was about unity, trust, and shared purpose. It amplified their abilities because it connected them not just as allies, but as partners in every sense. By dawn, the palace was secure once more. The intruders had been captured or driven off, and the bond between Liara and Kale had deepened, becoming something neither could ignore. As they stood together on the observation deck, watching the sunrise over the floating cities, Liara felt a new sense of resolve. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. "There will be more challenges, more enemies. But now I know. We can face them. Together." Kyle nodded, his eyes reflecting the first light of the suns. "Together. And nothing will break this bond, not the rogue faction, not the stars themselves." The world of Valoria was vast and filled with unseen dangers. Yet for the first time, Liara felt a quiet confidence. The bond was real, powerful, and undeniable. And with Kale by her side, she was ready to uncover the full truth of their connection and the destiny it held not just for them, but for the galaxy itself. As the day began, the palace stirred with life, unaware that a bond forged by fate had already begun to shape the course of history. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the glowing forests and floating cities, the universe watched, sensing that a new force, human and Valorian united, had awakened. The palace of Valoria was alive with tension. Whispers moved through the corridors like shadows, carried by servants, guards, and courtiers alike. Liara walked beside Kale, her posture calm but her mind alert. The bond between them had grown stronger with every shared battle, every test of skill and courage, but now it was being tested in ways neither of them could fully anticipate. Kale noticed the subtle changes in Liara's demeanor. She was still the princess, regal, thoughtful and decisive, but there was a new intensity in her eyes, a determination sharpened by the realization of the bond and its consequences. "Are you ready for what comes next?" he asked softly, glancing at her. Liara nodded. "I am. We have faced intruders, assassins, and threats before. But this will test us differently. The bond will be both our strength and our challenge. We must trust it completely." The elders of Valoria had arranged a ritual known as the Rite of Harmony. It was an ancient practice, designed to stabilize the connection between bonded mates and unlock their full potential. The ritual was not just ceremonial, it was a test of mental, physical, and emotional endurance. For Kale, it would push him far beyond the limits of human experience. For Liara, it would require vulnerability, patience, and complete openness to the bond's power. The chamber prepared for the rite was vast, circular, and illuminated with soft, shifting lights. Symbols etched into the floor glowed faintly as the energy of the room resonated with the crystal they had discovered together. Elder Vayon stood at the center, his voice calm but firm. "The bond you share is rare and powerful. To awaken its full potential, you must face trials that challenge your fears, your instincts, and your trust in one another. Only when you act as one will the bond reach its true strength." Liara and Kale took their positions on opposite sides of the chamber. At first, the exercises were simple: coordination drills, physical challenges, and meditation exercises meant to attune their minds. But the simplicity was deceptive. The bond amplified even minor missteps, forcing them to focus not just on themselves, but on each other. Kale was the first to notice the deeper effects. During a synchronization drill, he felt Liara's thoughts as clearly as if they were his own. A hesitation in her mind, a flicker of uncertainty, and he adjusted his movements instantly. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced, and it left him both exhilarated and unnerved. Liara, too, felt the bond stretching her awareness. She sensed Kael's heartbeat, his breathing, and even emotions he had not expressed aloud. She realized that trust was not just about reliance in battle, it was about understanding each other's thoughts and fears without words. She closed her eyes, letting the bond guide her, and felt the chamber respond. The symbols on the floor brightened, the air vibrating with energy, and she knew they were making progress. But the Rite of Harmony was not just about strength, it was about confronting the fears that had long been buried. For Kale, visions of failure and helplessness emerged. He saw himself unable to protect Liara, the palace falling to the rogue faction, and himself powerless to change the outcome. The fear was overwhelming, but Liara's presence, sensed through the bond, anchored him. Her calm determination reminded him that they were not alone. Together, they could face anything. Liara's own trial was no less challenging. She faced visions of betrayal, political collapse, and the possibility of losing control over her kingdom. Yet Kale's steady presence guided her through each illusion. When she faltered, he offered reassurance not with words, but with the bond itself. A shared thought, a sense of confidence, and a reminder that they were connected. By the third day, the bond had strengthened to an unprecedented degree. Liara and Kale could anticipate each other's movements in combat, read subtle changes in expression, and share strategic thoughts without speaking. They practiced against holographic warriors, the simulations becoming increasingly complex. Every strike, dodge, and maneuver was coordinated perfectly, as if two minds had merged into one. But the rogue faction did not remain idle. Reports arrived that mercenaries had gathered in the outskirts of Valoria, planning a full-scale assault. Their objective was clear: capture Liara, neutralize KL, and seize the crystal artifact that represented the bond's power. The princess and the human warrior had only a short window to prepare. Elder Vayon convened a council of war. "They will strike soon," he warned. "And they will not be subtle. You must lead the palace defenses, using your bond to coordinate strategies no ordinary commander could manage." Liara felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was a princess, a leader, and now, with Kale, part of something far greater than herself. "We are ready," she said, her voice steady. "We will not allow them to harm our people or use the bond for their own gain." The first attack came just before dawn. The rogue faction's fleet approached Valoria from multiple directions, their ships cloaked until the last moment. On the palace's observation deck, Liara and Kale watched the incoming threat. They felt the bond pulse, a surge of energy that sharpened their senses and synchronized their minds. "Divide and flank," Kale suggested, reading Liara's thoughts as clearly as his own. "I'll take the left corridor. You guide the palace defenses and cut off their reinforcements." Liara nodded. "We move together. Watch for their energy disruptors, they'll try to separate us." The battle was intense. Waves of mercenaries breached the outer defenses, using energy weapons and alien technology to confuse and disorient the palace guards. But Liara and Kael were already in perfect sync. They moved like shadows, anticipating attacks, directing soldiers, and countering threats with precision. Kael disarmed a group of attackers who tried to flank Liara, using a combination of martial skill and predictive movement guided by the bond. Liara, in turn, directed reinforcements to block the corridors, her voice calm and decisive. The bond allowed them to communicate silently, coordinating strategies faster than any standard command system. Yet the rogue faction had not revealed their full plan. The faction leader, a former Valorian general who had turned traitor, appeared in the throne chamber, wielding forbidden technology, capable of disrupting the bond. A pulse of energy radiated from his weapon, causing a brief but terrifying dissonance between Liara and Kael. They stumbled, almost losing coordination in the critical moment. Liara felt panic rise, but Kael's presence anchored her. "Trust me," he sent through the bond, a thought that carried certainty and strength. Liara matched his rhythm, their connection stabilizing despite the disruption. With renewed focus, they launched a counterattack. Liara used her knowledge of the palace layout and strategic mind, while Kael's warrior instincts and quick reflexes allowed them to strike decisively. Together, they cornered the faction leader, neutralizing his technology and capturing him before he could inflict lasting damage. As the sun rose over Valoria, the palace and city were secure once again. The rogue faction's forces had been defeated or driven off, and the people of Valoria looked upon their leaders with awe. The bond between Liara and Kael had proven its strength, not just in battle, but in leadership, strategy, and unity. In the aftermath, Liara walked through the courtyard, watching the citizens tend to the wounded and repair the damage. Kael stayed close, alert but calm. "They will return," he said quietly, "but we are ready. Together, we can face anything." Liara smiled faintly. "The bond is more than strength. It is trust, understanding, and courage. We have faced trials that could have broken us, and yet, we have grown stronger. I see now that this is not just about protecting Valoria. It is about preparing for whatever challenges lie ahead beyond our world, beyond our understanding." Kael placed a hand on hers, a gesture both human and intimate, yet amplified by the bond. "Then we face them together, and nothing will break this bond. Not enemies, not distance, not even fate itself." For the first time, Liara allowed herself to imagine the future. She saw a galaxy where humans and Valorians worked together, united not just by treaties or politics, but by shared purpose and strength. The bond was a symbol, a beacon of what could be achieved when different worlds connected through courage, trust, and determination. As evening fell, the two stood on the palace terrace, looking out at the floating cities, the bioluminescent forests, and the distant stars. The bond between them pulsed gently, a reminder of the trials they had endured and the power that awaited them. Somewhere in the cosmos, unseen forces watched, sensing that a new force had awakened, a union of human and Valorian that could alter the balance of power in ways no one had imagined. And as the stars shone brighter above, Liara and Kael knew that the true tests were only beginning. The bond was strong, but the universe was vast, filled with unknown threats, ancient mysteries, and challenges that would require every ounce of their courage, skill, and unity. Together, They were unstoppable, but the coming trials would demand more than they had faced yet. The days that followed the rogue faction's failed attack were tense but purposeful. Liara and Kale trained relentlessly, refining their bond, testing their limits, and preparing for the inevitable. Word had reached them that the faction was regrouping, gathering stronger forces and more advanced technology for a final strike. The threat was no longer local, it was interstellar. Liara stood on the palace terrace, looking out at the floating cities bathed in the soft light of Valoria's three suns. Her mind raced, thinking of the bond, the people she had sworn to protect, and the vastness of the galaxy beyond. Kale approached silently, his armor glinting faintly in the sunlight. "Princess," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We are ready. The bond has grown. We are stronger than ever. Whatever comes, we will face it together." Liara turned to him, a mixture of resolve and gratitude in her eyes. "Yes, Kale, together. And we will show them that unity between human and Valorian is not weakness, it is strength." The rogue faction struck at dawn, emerging from the dark void of space with a fleet larger and more aggressive than before. Their ships were equipped with cloaking devices, energy disruptors, and devastating weaponry designed to overwhelm Valoria's defenses. The city bristled with alarms, and the palace's energy shields hummed to life. Kale and Liara moved to the command chamber, a vast circular room overlooking the city and its protective barriers. Through the bond, they shared instant awareness of each other's strategies, reading thoughts and intentions as easily as spoken words. Orders were given with minimal speech. Soldiers moved with perfect coordination, their movements guided by the bond between the princess and the human warrior. The first wave of attackers descended, their ships firing energy blasts that shattered parts of the city's floating platforms. Liara and Kale watched carefully, anticipating movements, predicting attacks, and countering with precision. When a vessel attempted to bypass the shields and target the palace directly, Kale launched a rapid response, guiding interceptors to cut it off, while Liara redirected defensive energy fields to protect civilians. The rogue faction had learned from their previous failures. They unleashed a specialized squadron equipped with devices designed to disrupt the bond itself. As the devices fired, a sudden dissonance rippled through Liara and Kale's connection. For a moment, they stumbled, coordination faltering as their minds struggled to stay in sync. Liara gritted her teeth, feeling panic rise. "Kale, focus! We cannot let them separate us." Kale reached out through the bond, a mental anchor of strength. "I am with you. Trust me. Remember why we are bonded." The surge of trust and shared purpose stabilized their connection. The devices faltered under the combined power of their will, the bond resonating so strongly that the attackers were forced to retreat. Liara felt the energy of the crystal within the palace respond, amplifying the bond's strength and projecting a protective aura over the city. The battle moved to the palace itself. The rogue faction's leader, the traitorous general, had activated a forbidden technology capable of disrupting Valorian energy fields. He intended to seize the crystal artifact and sever the bond permanently. Liara and Kale moved swiftly, their connection allowing them to anticipate his every move. Kale dodged energy blasts with uncanny timing, while Liara directed the palace defenses to counter the general's technology. The bond between them was now more than a link, it was a weapon, a strategic advantage that allowed them to predict, react, and act in perfect harmony. The final confrontation came in the throne chamber. The general stood before them, his device glowing with destructive energy. "You think a human and a Valorian can stop me?" he sneered. "Legends are meaningless against power." "Come now." Liara stepped forward, her voice calm and commanding. "Strength is not just power, it is unity, trust, and courage. And we have all three, together." Kale moved beside her, their hands brushing briefly. The bond flared between them, a radiant pulse of energy that filled the chamber. The general's device trembled, flickering as the bond disrupted its power. With a synchronized strike, Kale disarmed the general, while Liara channeled the bond's energy into a focused blast. The device shattered, and the general collapsed, defeated but alive, powerless to threaten them again. The aftermath was a mixture of relief and celebration. Valoria had survived the greatest threat in decades, and the bond between Liara and KL had proven its true strength. Soldiers and citizens alike marveled at the seamless coordination and courage they displayed. Inspired by the unity of human and Valorian, Liara and KL took a moment to stand together on the palace terrace, overlooking the floating cities and the forests below. The bond between them pulsed softly, a reminder of their shared journey and the connection that had carried them through trials both physical and emotional. "We did it," Liara said quietly, her eyes reflecting the glow of the city lights. "But this is only the beginning. The galaxy is vast, and there will always be threats." KL nodded. "We have the bond, and we have each other. Whatever comes next, we will face it together, and we will not falter." In the weeks that followed, Liara embraced her role as queen fully, with KL at her side not just as a protector, but as a partner. The bond allowed them to lead with unmatched insight and coordination. They forged alliances with neighboring systems, strengthening Valoria's position and creating a network of trust and unity across the stars. The legend of the bonded mates grew, spreading across the galaxy as a symbol of hope and collaboration. Humans and Valorians learned from each other, combining courage, ingenuity, and resilience in ways that had never been seen before. Liara and KL became icons of interstellar unity, their story inspiring countless others to seek strength in cooperation rather than conflict. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, the twin moons rising in the sky, Liara felt the bond pulse gently, a constant reassurance of KL's presence and shared purpose. "I see now," she said softly, "that the bond is not just about power. It is about connection, heart, mind, and soul working together. It is about creating a future where we face challenges not alone, but united." KL smiled, squeezing her hand lightly. "And that future begins now. We will protect our people, strengthen our alliances, and explore the galaxy together. Nothing will break this bond, Princess, not time, not distance, not even the universe itself." Liara looked at him, seeing not just a warrior, but a companion, a partner, and the reflection of her own courage and strength. The journey they had undertaken had changed them both, revealing abilities and resilience that neither could have imagined. The galaxy was vast, but together they were unstoppable. The stars above Valoria shone brighter that night, as if acknowledging the awakening of a new force. The union of human and Valorian, bonded not just by chance but by destiny, had become a symbol of hope and strength. Across distant systems, whispers of the bond spread, carrying the promise that even in the darkest corners of space, unity and courage could shine brighter than any weapon or force. Liara and KL stood together, their hands intertwined, hearts and minds connected by the bond that had carried them through trials, battles, and revelations. They knew challenges would come again, threats from beyond, unforeseen dangers, and tests of trust, but they also knew that nothing could break what they shared. The bond was a force that transcended fear, distance, and even time. As the moons reflected their soft glow on the floating city spires, Liara felt a quiet joy. The people of Valoria were safe, the rogue faction defeated, and the bond had proven its true power not just in combat, but in leadership, unity, and the promise of a better future. KL turned to her, his eyes reflecting determination and warmth. "We have done well, Liara. But this is only the start. Together, we will face whatever the galaxy has in store." Liara nodded, feeling the truth of every word through the bond. "Together," she repeated. And in that simple word lay the strength of two souls united, a force that would guide Valoria and the galaxy toward hope, courage, and a future built on trust and unity. In the days that followed, the legend of Liara and KL continued to grow. Stories of the bonded mates spread across the stars, inspiring humans and Valorians alike. Other civilizations took notice, forging alliances and seeking guidance from the pair who had shown that unity between worlds was more powerful than conflict. And through it all, the bond remained a living, breathing connection that reminded them of the trials they had faced, the victories they had earned, and the endless possibilities that awaited them. Liara and KL, had uncovered the truth of their bond, embraced it fully, and used it to protect their people and shape the future. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, but the bonded mates of Valoria had proven that courage, trust, and unity could illuminate even the darkest reaches of space. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were a force that could change the stars. And together, they would continue to face the challenges of the universe, hand in hand, heart to heart, bound not just by destiny, but by the unbreakable connection they had discovered in each other.